Welcome back. This is lesson 1.5. And in this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Xcode interface and just become familiar with it. So looking at your chapter, it takes you through, it shows you the interface. We're going to open it in a minute and go through it. And it talks about some of the shortcuts and how to use the Xcode preference, how to change the preferences, and that's about it. I'm actually going to go into a little bit more detail than the section goes into, just so you can get really comfortable with the interface. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually open the file that goes with lesson 1.6, which is the debugging section. Unit 1, debugging, and I'm going to open this file. Okay, so when you first enter Xcode, here on the left-hand side, you get to see the navigator area, and we have the file tree. So this is the folder where this file is found in. So all these files are in the first time debugging folder. Okay, we can click here, open and close these. You can also double click on, if I click once on the file, it opens the file. But if I double click on the file, oh, it's pretty slow, should go faster than that, it just opens a whole new window with that actual file. So this is the main storyboard, and it shows you the file separately from this window that we were in. Okay, so we'll get back to here. Let's see. Okay, this is really useful. This is the search. And the search, it's actually searching your program or your code. So if there is a particular variable or function that you're looking for example, let's say that I'm looking for app delegate. It doesn't care about capitalization. So if I type in that and I press enter, it shows me the one place where I find class app delegate. And if I click on it, then it highlights it in your code editor. This is your code editor window right here in the middle. Okay, so we have the navigator area, we have the code editor in the center. If you've programmed before in other languages, it looks a lot like many of the compilers that you use, like Dev C++ or Eclipse or something like that. And this little button here shows you all of the errors and the warnings that you have in your program. So I picked this one because this actually is going to give us some errors and show you some of the errors that it finds in your program. And then let's see here, this one, breakpoints. You're going to learn about adding breakpoints to your program as you learn to debug. And basically, when you add a breakpoint and then you run your program, it stops the execution at that particular point. So if I add a breakpoint here in line 14, then when I run my program, it will stop executing at line 14, and I can debug. Maybe I can look at the variables to see what the data is in them, or I can step through the code line by line. If I want to disable the breakpoint, I just click on it once. If I want to get rid of the breakpoint completely, I click, I hold, and I drag, and then it goes away. Okay. This here just lets you know at the last time that this file was edited. So this is the last time that something was changed. Now here, up here, we have our toolbar for Xcode. Here's the toolbar, and we'll look in there in a minute. Before we go in the toolbar, let's just go down the line here. These little arrows are very convenient. They let you go back and forward between files that you've opened. So like the previous file that you had open, and then kind of like when you're in a browser and you can go back to the last file that you had opened. So let's go back to here. And this just goes, I don't know that I had anything. There we go. So if I go to info and then I go back, this is the last file I had opened. This here is just letting you know where you came from. So this came from this folder, which came from here, from that folder. And okay, so let's look up here. Up here, this is a quick way to build and run your program. Every time that you write code, you can either build it. Building it just tells you if there are errors, or you can build and run. And by doing that, it builds, checks to see if there are errors. If there are no errors, it then just runs your program. I always just build and run. I mean, if it's going to build, I want it to run. So I just skip the step. But if you go, let's see here, I usually use the shortcut. So this is under, okay, here we go, editor, product, debug. Okay, somewhere up here we're going to find debug. Here we go, product run. So there's several ways you can run your program. You can just use Command R. So that's going to be the shortcut, and then you'll forget, like I do, where in the world it is up here, because you really don't need to go up here. But if you want, you could do that. You could build, and you could, there's three things you could do in building. You could build and run, which is the same thing as this, which is the same thing as just going to this arrow, or you can build for testing. And basically what that does is just builds, and then it shows you if there are any errors. If there are no errors, then it doesn't run it. And maybe at times you may not want to run it. Okay? When you run the program, what it does is it opens the simulator, and it's going to open the simulator that you have set here. So here is going to open the simulator for iPhone 8 Plus, and then I have to change it if I want it to be, let's say, let's say that, for example, I own an iPhone 6S, and maybe I want it to run on the iPhone 6X because I want to see it run on my iPhone, so I would change it to this simulator and have it run for an iPhone 6S, or maybe I want to see what it looks like on an iPad. And looking up here, this here is just telling me I have 2 errors. This here is also telling me that I have an error in my code. And if I click on it, it takes me to where the error is, right here. Okay, in the next video, we'll talk about debugging, and we'll actually go through and debug this. Even though that's one of your labs, I want to go through it with you because I think it's a little bit hard for new students who've never looked at code and debugged before. Like all this looks like, all this is strange to new students who've never coded at all. Okay, this first button is just a standard window like this. This one gives you two windows, and what these are is, okay, you see up here where it says import UI kit. Well, the thing that it imports is this file. This file is the UI kit, the user interface kit. So a file that is associated with this one will open on the right hand side, which can be useful because then you can see maybe there's an error in this file. So it may stop at the import and the error's here. So you can kind of see what this has. If you want to go back to a normal view, just click on the dashed lines. Okay, this here gets rid of the left window. This opens and gets rid of the bottom windows. This gets rid of the right window if you want to have more space. So typically, you don't need this here on the right. This is, it's the utility area, and you don't need this area unless you're working with, let's say, storyboards. When we start working with storyboards, this will be useful. This is information about this file, and right now it's not useful, so I'm going to take it off because we don't need it. But we do want to keep the bottom ones down here, and we do want to keep the left-hand side. Okay, so I'm going to keep it like this. Just looking back at this one again, this right-hand side is called the utility area. I don't think there's anything else I want to say about that, so I'm going to close it. And okay, so we talked about the different areas. We talked about the shortcuts. If you forget, they're in your book. That's not the right section. Here we go. So these are the shortcuts. Or you can just go back up here where it says product and see the shortcut there on the right. So this says to hold the command button and type R. And to build, it would be command button B for building right here, command B. Okay. Now, there's also your lesson 1.5 talks about preferences, changing preferences. So if you go under Xcode and click on preferences, the one thing I want to show you is that you can change the way your code editor looks. So let's say you don't like, oops, I want to move that. Let's say you don't like this white background with these colors. Excuse me. Then you can click here. There's some different themes. A lot of people, they either choose the default or they choose dusk. I don't ever see most people using the other options. So dusk looks like this, and some people just enjoy those colors. I do not, so you will not see my videos using that. I just like the plain default, which are the colors that I see on all editors. I teach Java and I teach C++, and so I just like everything to look the same. Later on, we'll talk about some of the other options that you have here, but for now, this is the only thing I want to get into. If you want to play with it, you can change your background colors, your cursor, all kinds of different stuff. Okay, guys, email me if you have any questions.